Welcome back to the Contrary podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes. We are joined once again by Garry Kasparov, former world chess champion, and the author of the Substack newsletter, The Next Move, also the co-host of the Atlantic's podcast on autocracy. Welcome back to the podcast, Garry. I appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you for having me again.
So right before we started, I said, boy, this has just been a terrible week. And you pointed out it's not just the week, is it? We live in terrible times.
I wish it would be just a week, but we live in terrible times, and it's unpredictable. But the only thing we can predict is things could get only worse.
No, and that seems like a safe bet. So we were talking about, and we'll get to this in a little while, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the arrest of the assassin, and the way that whole murder is being weaponized by the right, in the way that Donald Trump is talking about it and the threats that he's making. But let's start with the other biggest story of the week, the Russian, however you want to call it, incursion into Poland. I mean, this was a major escalation. You had Russian drones clearly targeted at a NATO ally. So let's talk about why you think this happened, Europe's reaction, and America's reaction. So let's just start with the fact that how many weeks now are we after the big peace summit in Alaska, and Trump and Putin's reaction has been to launch hundreds of drones against Ukraine, and now attacking a NATO ally.
You know, what brings together in my mind this assassination of Charlie Kirk and Russian attack on Poland? It was predictable. Both were predictable, because it's like a logical continuation of the unfolding events, and it's I say predictable because the whole climate, it indicates that one way or another it would happen. If you promote violence for a long time, terrible things happen. And as for Putin's attack on Poland, I've been saying it for ages. Dictators do not stop until they stopped. They never ask why, but why not? And escalation became the only way for Putin to keep this war going. And Putin is war. There's no other way he can stay in power, because after 25 years, every dictator needs some kind of justification. It's kind of a legacy. Why I'm there. And Putin already exhausted all his, this domestic tools. The Russian economy doesn't work. It's the people just, they can no longer be told lies about Putin the Great, because their living standards just suck.
Yeah.
So as every dictator before him, so Putin had to look elsewhere, outside of the country, for enemies. You always have to explain why the situation in the country is not good, and why he must stay on top to lead the nation to defend itself.
Is there any doubt in your mind that the attack on Poland was intentional, as opposed to just somebody got the coordinates wrong? Was it an intentional attack on a NATO ally?
Absolutely. There were 19 drones.
Right.
There were many cases where you could argue that it was not intentional. There were a couple of drones that actually landed in Poland before. There were probably 2 or 3 in Romania. I think there were a few cases in Finland. One was in Lithuania. I'm not sure that it was unintentional. I still think it was just it's the first, like snippets of just checking, whether this is the reaction. But you could always say, 1 drone, 2 drones, Ukrainian anti-drone, technology basically forced them to change course, but not with the 19, especially few of them flying, a couple of 100 miles deep into Polish territory. So it was a deliberate attack.
Yeah. Okay, but I understand that he wants to keep the war going, but was he testing? Let's assume that it wasn't intentional. Attacking Poland, potentially is a major escalation, and bringing together is Vladimir Putin now testing the resolve of NATO, of the West, and how has NATO responded? What did you think about the response of the Europeans to the attack on Poland?
Absolutely, he has been testing the resolve of Europeans because let's not forget, the war Putin has been conducting is not just a war against Ukraine. And here I'm not speculating. I'm not just telling you just my theories. I simply follow the Russian propaganda lines and what Putin had been saying over years. It's a war against NATO. Actually, it's larger, a war to reorganize the liberal world order. Vladimir Putin has been very steady in his belief that now we are in the midst of the World War IV. Because World War III, in his mind, was the Cold War that Soviet Union, the Russian Empire, lost. This is the war to take revenge. And he knew that Russia was not strong enough to take on America and NATO. But he was good at covert operations. It's more like, just making clandestine moves. He's a KGB guy. And Russia has been engaged in this hybrid war against Europe for years. And Putin's goal was, as he said back in 2005, addressing the joint session of Russian parliament and Russian Senate, that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century.
Yes.
And in 2007, he bluntly told leaders of the free world, including Bush 43, at Munich Security Conference, NATO must go back to 1997 borders. That's the goal. Basically, NATO is viewed as an enemy, not of Russia today, but enemy of the Putin's idealistic view of Russian empire. So NATO has been taking, or just pieces of Russian old greatness. So in Vladimir Putin's mind, Poland, as Ukraine, as Baltic states, as Finland, they all belong to the so-called Russian sphere of influence. And that's why he was quite consistent. You can blame him, and rightly so, in many crimes he committed. But he was very consistent in his program to expand Russian influence. And he was very skillful, give him credit, for weakening us, the free world, from within. If you look at European politics, every country has a major
American
political
politics.
force, mostly on the right, but some on the left, that are openly supporting Vladimir Putin. And of course, here in the United States, we have many of Putin's sympathizers as high as the Oval Office.
Well, and of course, his return on investment in messing with our elections is pretty dramatically high given what's happened. So what did you think of the European reaction? Poland invoked Article 4 of the NATO treaty, which requires consultation. Were you satisfied that Europe understands the threat, or were we just getting more harshly worded letters and hand-waving?
Europe understands the threat, but understanding the threat and acting, there's a distance.
Yeah.
And I tweeted after this big summit in China that crowned Xi Jinping as the leader of the Dictators Incorporated, where Vladimir Putin basically, sworn as a vassal to Xi. That the new world order that China is trying to build has two cornerstones: American corruption and European impotence. What we saw now, it's another illustration of European impotence. Big talks. It was an attack. Article 4 is basically nothing. Why not Article 5? So Putin wanted to achieve few goals. One is to test NATO air defense system. It's a joke. I mean, you don't want to use $2.5 million missile to hit $10,000 drone. Yeah. So Europeans are praying that things may somehow be resolved because Ukraine is resilient. Ukrainians, could stop Putin's armies, and maybe at one point Trump could change his mind, and America would force Russia to the negotiating table. They have no real plan of fighting back yet. Europe has resources. They don't have the same armies, but they have money. They have more people than America. It's around 450 million people. So they have industries, but it's not about even weapons. It's about political will and a general mood of the nation. Ukrainians prove they're willing to die for their country. Baltic nations, they know they have no choice. Finns will fight. Poles will also fight. But the rest of Europe, you look at Germany, where only 16% of Germans, according to the latest poll, were willing to fight for their country.
Really?
Yeah. So now imagine, what would happen if Putin decides one day to attack Baltic nations. So Europe, let's be honest, and I don't often agree with Donald Trump. Actually, I almost never agree with him, but he was right. Europe was spoiled by not. It's not just about spending money, but also by mentality. Decades of this complacency, because America was there to defend Europe, and all of a sudden, Europeans has discovered very unpleasant truths. So they have to defend themselves against the real threat, not an imaginary threat, against the real threat, against the real army, and a guy who is willing to break all the rules and has no allergy for blood and no inclination to withdraw from the most barbaric ways of conducting war.
So let's talk about the way Donald Trump has responded. He indicates he was unhappy about it. But I mean, the 2-week deadlines on imposing sanctions come and go and come and go. And he's endured several humiliations. I mean, the humiliation of the summit in China that you talked about that he wasn't invited to. And rather than impose more sanctions on Russia, he's lifting sanctions, right, on Russian allies. I saw that you had posted about that. So he's actually going backwards. Rather than sanctioning Russia, he in fact is once again rewarding Vladimir Putin for his aggression.
Are you surprised?
No.
Again, it's in this unpredictable world. There are a few things we can predict. Every decision made by Donald Trump has two criteria, and both personal: monetization and glorification. That's it. He doesn't care about Ukraine. He doesn't care about Russia. He doesn't care about America. It's all about Donald Trump. So I just, this morning, actually, I saw that there was a recording of Donald Trump's first response to 9/11 back in 2001.
Yes.
I mean, he bragged that after the World Trade Center was destroyed, his building was the tallest in the city. It just
very much on brand.
The mind of this person.
Yeah.
So now he has all the power. He doesn't have to bother about any response to his actions, and I mean it's almost unlimited opportunities to enrich himself, and also just to add glory. So that's why. He grabs every opportunity. And Putin, it's someone he envies. I'm not here to speculate whether there's something else, which I think most likely there was something there that Putin knew about Trump, and this is all Trump KGB connections. But just, looking at the Trump's character. So Putin is a partner, and it's not a junior partner, which is quite amazing because Putin is acting like a satellite or sea, and Trump is subordinate to Putin. That gives an idea, where Trump is versus Xi Jinping and China. So Trump was looking for opportunities to advance his cause, not American, not European, not free will, and of course Putin is there to make offers. I always pointed out that the whole negotiations with Putin has not been conducted by the State Department. Just typically, you need a State Department or National Security Advisor. There's no one now there. But still, it was a Rubio's job. Instead, It was a Trump's business partner who was there. And I can bet you my bottom dollar, he didn't talk about American strategic interest. It's all about, what's for me, what's for my boss. And I just had word from my European friends a couple of days ago that Secretary Bessent told Europeans bluntly that at the end of the hostilities, they would have to return $190 billion of Russian assets frozen in Europe to Russia. Great. I wonder if that's true. I wonder, what is the Witkoff's that Trump commissions out of the deal.
So let's go back before Trump, because you wrote a very, I think it was a disturbing and provocative piece earlier this week talking about all of the failures of the West. We didn't just get here in the last week, the last month, even the last 10 years. This has been a long, long road of the West, being the United States and Europe, failing to confront Vladimir Putin in his rise to power and everything that he's done. So talk to me a little bit about what you wrote about the way Vladimir Putin handled the aftermath to 9/11, because we mentioned 9/11 a little bit earlier. And you pointed out the way that Vladimir Putin played the United States, President Bush, after that attack on the United States.
I think the road to 9/11 actually began 10 years early, in 1991, when the Cold War was won. The Soviet Union has gone and just became history. And that's where America failed, being totally in charge, is all powerful, failed to come up with a new vision. Because you always have to write a new chapter, to start a new chapter of history. And that was America's responsibility. And if in 1992, when Bill Clinton was elected, so America could basically move the mountains and change the landscape. When Clinton left the office, Al-Qaeda was ready to strike, and Vladimir Putin was in the office. That tells you that the 90s, they were not good, because the momentum to rebuild the world, and to codify the changes, the triumph of the liberal world order, this momentum was missed. And Vladimir Putin came to power. I don't think he had big ambitions at the time, but he had KGB instincts. And his work with Bush 43 began even before 9/11, when they met in Slovenia in June 1991. And Vladimir Putin, reading Bush bio and knowing his religious beliefs, he sold him this fake story about a cross, the gift from my grandmother that I carried, just under my shirt. I mean, come on, it's a joke. Yeah. It's a KGB cross. But it did work. So Putin already had an experience. He already had a good read of Bush 43. So that's why the first thing he did in 9/11, hello, I'm here. First one, he jumped in.
First one.
It's absolutely, he jumped in saying, of course we offer you support. So he already recognized that America would be too busy with the war on terror. Again, I don't want to speculate that Russia had anything to do with 9/11. No. It's Putin creates opportunities, but much more often he uses them. He's a great opportunist. So he hasn't created this as the ideological divide. But he saw this, the Vogue, versus MAGA. That's an opportunity. Same in 91, in 2001. He knew that was his moment. So that's basically to neutralize America. And he offered full cooperation. Russia has never stopped, trading heroin with Afghan warlords. But he got, Bush, as his friend. And that's why he bought time to destroy the very feeble Russian democracy. And that's why by 2005, his second term, he was already willing to make the big statement. And in 2007, he was emboldened enough to look straight into Bush's eyes and say, you know what, guys, 1997 borders, please, I'm here, just ready to dictate the terms. So, and then in 2008, they attacked the Republic of Georgia. And there's every time, just as he moved forward, he never made moves that could be just so brazen. He has not attacked whole Ukraine. Just he tried Crimea, then East Ukraine. So he was always, incremental, just, testing the water. But I have to say that it's not just Bush's fault. It's the West became complacent. Nobody wanted confrontations. And Putin had a good read of the general mood of the Western politicians. It's not about confrontation, it's about doing business. And Putin was very good. Doing business, yes, absolutely. Let's do business, yes. Because contrary to the expectations that doing business with Putin, Russia would liberalize Russian economy and Russian political life, it was the opposite. It corrupted the Western political life. Its liberalization, never made made roots in Russia. But the corruption became widespread everywhere, from Berlin to Washington.
No, this is a long and, I think, embarrassing tradition that we've seen of giving in to Vladimir Putin. So, but now I want to kind of connect the dots between, because you've watched, for many, many years, you watched Vladimir Putin's rise to power. You are a student of autocracy, of authoritarianism in other countries. And I want to link this to the moment we're in right now. And I want to be very, very clear, about the tragedy of the murder of Charlie Kirk, without any justification whatsoever. I am appalled and disgusted by the people who are celebrating all of this. But I think it's also very obvious that Trump and his allies are weaponizing the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And they are talking about retaliation, using the power of the government to go after organizations, entities, speech that they now want to suppress. So does any of this, I mean, give me your sense of the, as we've talked before about the danger of authoritarianism, the use of fear, but there's also, in every story, there's that pretext, there's that moment in which someone says, this embodies the crisis, this embodies the emergency, and this is what I'm going to do. How dangerous is that moment for us now?
This moment was dangerous even before this fateful shot in Utah. It just adds to the list of our concerns, grave concerns about the future of American democracy. You mentioned the podcast that I'm doing now. It's there are 3 more episodes to go, called Autocracy in America, the 2nd season. And also I wrote 2 articles for The Atlantic called The Putinization of America. And the 3rd one is on the way. Actually, it's being submitted. It should be published soon. And it's called The Race to Save American Democracy. And I'm truly, it's worried. It's more than worried. I have deep, grave, concerns about the outcome of 2026 elections. Not because I expect that the country would rally behind Donald Trump. It's the opposite. I think the Republicans are just are heading for major defeat in 2026. If, and I emphasize this word, we have free and fair elections. Now it will be free, but I don't think it will be fair. And I think I think we're reaching a point where Donald Trump may have enough of critical mass in his administration and respective agencies that will be willing to cross the ultimate red line and to follow the boss rather than defending the Constitution.
Well, you heard his speech the other night in the Oval Office, where he interesting that I don't recall a presidential speech after the murder of the legislators in Minnesota or other crimes, but he specifically made it clear that he was going to target far left radicals, their speech, and they're going to go after organizations that might have engaged in it. And if you look at the rhetoric that you see on the right now, talking about how it's war and we need vengeance, we are in just to talk very specifically about, I want you to talk specifically about the aftermath of Charlie Kirk, this act of violence. We've been on, it's all predictable. We've been on this path for some time. Are there those moments that are those pivotal moments? And I'm struggling not to use the term Reichstag fire, but there is always that pretext, that excuse for authoritarians to enhance their power and attack their enemies. So what are you hearing when Donald Trump talks about that we're going to go after, the rhetoric, the far left rhetoric? Does that mean that anyone that calls Trump, compares him, uses the word fascism or talks about authoritarianism or talks about racism, that anyone who does that somehow is now complicit in an act of violence and there's going to be retaliation?
Look, Donald Trump never delivered presidential speeches. He was not making a secret that he was not running the country on behalf of all Americans. He was a party president. Actually, not a party president, a MAGA president. So he proudly said and repeated many times that he represented his base, not even the whole GOP. The GOP has been subdued by the base. So Donald Trump knows that the base that must stay loyal, and he plays, just the tune that they love. And it did work. So that's why it's every time that, he thought, he could, it was on bumpy road and something didn't go right. So he doubled down. So now it's an ideal opportunity to push his agenda, which has been properly described in, for instance, his State of the Union. So he's looking for presidential rule being, supported only by one party. In his mind, he is already running one-party dictatorship. So that's why I'm saying that 2026 midterm is so important. It's probably one of the most, I don't like saying most, but one of the most faithful
Oh, sure.
elections in American history, because he cannot afford losing the House. I'm not even talking about the Senate.
Right.
He cannot lose the House, because then the whole construction falls apart. It's like a domino effect. So that's why he will use every opportunity. And unfortunately, there are too many of them. When you look at Pam Bondi or Kash Patel or many others there, do you have confidence that if Donald Trump tells them to cross this bridge and to violate constitutional order, they would say no? I doubt very much. And of course, the tragedy as one that happened in Utah offers unlimited opportunities to push the agenda. Again, it's not that we're not speculating. It's
No.
amazing that when dictators always lie about what they've done, but they always tell you what they're planning to do. Donald Trump's plans to establish one party rule where stays there on top as a king, it's not a secret. He has been saying that. And many people around him, without probably being so blunt, but they also supported this vision. So when you hear Caroline Levitt or just others saying, "Oh, these activist judges standing on the way of presidential agenda," they have been openly questioning the core element of American democracy, the constitutional idea of separation of powers, of the balance. And while Congress is paralyzed, so there's the judges also being under attack. So that's why I think that we are now entering this new phase where they will do whatever they can, legally and beyond that, to secure the elections in 2026, because he cannot afford to lose the very razor thin majority in the House.
You know, I'm coming around to this point of view because you look at Donald Trump and you realize that he's not the first leader who is riding the tiger and realizes he can't get off, because right now he cannot afford to give up that power. It is simply too dangerous for him to do it. And the rhetoric that you're seeing now is not the rhetoric of democratic debate, give and take, where the other party is the enemy. You look at the MAGA rhetoric that we are at war. One side must win, one side must lose. You are evil, you are dangerous, you are a terrorist. You don't compromise with people that you regard as your enemy in warfare. And so Trump has moved past the democratic norms so many times but it is important to understand what the implications of that are. The other big question, okay, I just want, parenthetically, when you talk about one party rule, every once in a while I'll get asked about, well, there's a public opinion poll showing he's, 57%, underwater. The only numbers that I think Donald Trump really genuinely cares about at this point is he holding his Republican base together? Because as long as he's got 90% support of the Republican base in a gerrymandered country, he still can control power. It doesn't matter. He doesn't have to convince you or me or anybody from Vermont or California or, Dane County in Wisconsin. As long as he has that power, he's going to be satisfied, and he has it. And the other big question that you raised there, that you referred to, and I think this is one of the reasons why there's so much anxiety, is I don't think that there's I get your take on this. How confident are we that the judiciary would stand against this momentum? Because I agree with you that they will try to stay in power. But what is your level of confidence in the U.S. Supreme Court saying, okay, we've gone along with a lot, but we're going to draw a red line here?
I wouldn't bet my bottom dollar on Supreme Court being the last line of defense for American Constitution. No, they keep saying that they would not, let Constitution to be abandoned. But there are so many ways to go around. So, for instance, I think on tariffs, they would probably rule against Trump. I think so.
Oh,
Again, not sure.
Yeah.
But as for the troops in the cities, I'm not so sure. So, and by the way, that's more important. I would not count on Supreme Court offering the ironclad defense against Donald Trump open intentions to extend his rule at the expense of other branches.
Really?
Now, the Article 1 is not judges, it's Congress. So that's the key. So that's why looking at what's happening in the Congress is the most important thing. And I think that is the problem is not Donald Trump's aggressive policies and him pushing his agenda even with this very, very small raises in majority. I think the problem is that the opposition. I mean, you have now 213 votes in the House, and they are I would say they're very quiet. You should give hell to Speaker Johnson every day. You have to do whatever you can, just to create this tension. All you need is 4 Republicans to shift sides. You have to put pressure. I don't see the pressure. I think it's not just Donald Trump, having the juggernaut that is moving just towards, what is left of the fortified American Constitution. You don't have the real opposition on the other side. They're still contemplating whether that's the right move, whether this one, party is badly divided. And this is our fundamental challenge. So you can't win against the bully with the army behind him. Even this army, as you said, it's a base, 25% of the country. But you don't have the coalition that could be powerful enough to confront them, because that's the way to send a message to the hesitant Republicans from purple states, that there is something that they have to count, not only being just, being terrified by Donald Trump's unlimited powers.
Well, Democrats have to decide in the next couple of weeks whether they're going to go along keeping the government open or whether they're going to shut down the government. My sense is the political momentum is very much against Democrats caving in again. What do you think? Do you have some thoughts about all of this? Because again, they're playing out the multiple moves. If the government shuts down, will Trump then blame it on us? What is our exit strategy? What do you think? What should the Democrats do?
Look, it's not an easy decision, but as in a previous moment, just a few months ago, I have the same opinion. They have to shut down the government. It's Trump is in power, because I know it may have the dramatic consequence. It's a risky move. But you don't win the war against, it's a rising authoritarianism by not taking risk. You cannot play safe. Yeah, you're moving in untested waters. But this state is no longer your friend. This state is not serving American people. So fight. Yes, it's a fight. It's a real fight. It is a problem, but it's a Trump's problem. Yes, he may start, expanding his powers. He does it anyway. Yeah. But it's this, at the end of the day, the American voter, looks at who is in the Oval Office. He's there. And I think his approval rating is not that high. So to basically blame Democrats. So yes, maybe MAGA will stay behind him, but as for independents and others, so create uncertainty helps the underdog. That's a rule of any fight. And Democrats are now underdogs now. So you need uncertainty, because uncertainty will create more hesitations, doubts among Republicans. Don't forget, you need 4. Just 4. So some of them are retiring. You don't know. So this is create problems. I think of that type. They strategically, as a professional player, I can tell you, they always benefit the weaker side.
Really. See, I think that Ezra Klein really put his finger on it when he said, look, let's stop pretending that this is normal, that the normal rules of politics apply. You have these guys that have been sitting in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, for decades now, and he's got a certain playbook. And at some point you go, no, this government is not like any other government that you have dealt with. The playing field is completely different. And unless you adjust to these new rules, you will get swept away. So I think for a lot of these folks, they fear the uncertainty, they fear the risk. And yet, given this moment, there is no way through this without taking risks, right? Without being aggressive.
Absolutely. So we ceded already too much territory, and we just have to say we have to put a flag somewhere. So that's the line, and stand by this line. Is it risky? Absolutely. But you have to take risk. And you pointed out that they've been around for too long. They want to play the same game, but this is not the same game. You just look at Trump's appointees. Yeah. So this is the people that have been approved by the Senate. So when was the last time that the Secretary of Defense, now Secretary of War, should I say? I'm not sure. So
Oh my God.
has been approved by the Senate by the casting vote of Vice President. Typically, positions of that type you need bipartisan support.
Yeah.
So you had Hexet, you had Tulsi Gabbard, you had Kash Patel, you had Kennedy Jr. So they all, it's approved by the party lines, even losing few Republican votes. So this is abnormal. This is absolutely abnormal. And pretending that you can win the game that is not played by the rules, following the rules. I mean, sorry, that's the wishful thinking.
Well, I mean, and again, part of it is this moment we're in where you can imagine, and this is not, I don't think, speculation, that they sit around the Oval Office and somebody might, I think it's unlikely, tell the president, you can't do this because it's illegal. It would violate the law. And my guess is that the consensus then is suddenly, well, who cares? We are above the law. You have a president who's immune from personal accountability, who has unlimited pardon power. And, in case after case, you hear something, you hear a story saying, well, this action violates the law, but who's going to enforce it? We just blew up a boat in the Caribbean with 11 people in it that may violate international law. What are the consequences? Who's going to hold anybody accountable for it? So this big so what? This is part of the new reality that you have a president who feels that he has unlimited power and that the laws that normally constrain elected officials don't apply to him or his gang.
Back in 2016 and 17, I wrote a few articles pointing out to the American public that many of the elements of American democracy, of this constitutional order, have not been codified, but rather been adopted as a norm. So nobody did it before. Thank you very much. Nobody did it before is not an argument. So, and I predicted Donald Trump would go after these norms, challenging them. Because at the end of the day, so what is this? It's a piece of paper. It's the Constitution, and I actually write about it in my next article. It's my conversation with Preet Bharara on his podcast when I asked him about, it was back, in late November after Trump's elections last year, whether the Constitution would prevent Trump running for the third time. And he said, it's ironclad. I said, are you sure? So this is, again, it's ironclad as long as people are willing to fight and even die for it. So it's the whole idea, not just of America built on the law, starting from Mayflower Compact, is based on the idea that it's more dangerous not to follow the law than to stick within the boundaries of the law because it's more profitable. So standards can change. I mean, today, nobody would even notice Watergate. We have Watergate every hour.
No.
So this, and again, it's just 50 plus years ago, we had a president. It's resigning because of this moral, violation of moral norms. So that it's not even, it was not even codified, but that's what made the whole country, just put country ablaze. So now I think that we are reaching a point where many people around Trump who are not protected by the immunity clause, Trump is, but they're not.
Yeah.
So they will have to make a choice, whether it is to follow Trump or a constitution. And I think some of them, and God forbid if it's a critical mass, may decide that it's more dangerous to follow the norm because if they lose power, there could be consequences. So, for instance,
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know whether those people are around anymore.
No, but but you have people that's, let's say, in the military. So this is we need there's ongoing purge of top military military brass now. So are you sure that they would be they would have enough spine to tell Trump that they would not go to blue cities, New York, Chicago, Baltimore? So if the order is being given, with all the constitutional uncertainties, because the oath is to the Constitution, not to Trump, not to the president. But it's not a clear red line. So I think that it's unless we fight now because that's why I say this is use every opportunity to fight, even if it's shut down of the country, force crisis now, because playing, by the book, it's you are going to lose, and we are going to lose. I'm not telling you that
No.
playing, playing aggressively, we're going to win, but statistically, it's our best chance to start pushing, back. You have to fight fire with fire.
Well, you were talking about the fragility of the norms, and I remember thinking during Trump's first term that when I was on these programs with people who were talking about all the norms that protected the Department of Justice, and if you listen closely and if you realize, as you point out, that it's not actually in the law, it's not codified, it was basically by an honor system, and that the system is really designed with the assumption that you will have honorable men and women in office or surrounded by other honorable men and women who would hold them accountable. And so all of that was this informal belief that human beings would do the right thing, that there would be a moral accountability. If you take that away, and this is what Donald Trump, he's looking around and going, none of that's worth anything. If I just simply defy it, who's going to do anything about it? So if you fight by the old rules that assume that there is this culture of shame, or there are these guardrails and bulwarks of accountability, you're going to lose. You are absolutely right. So we're going to find out very, very soon whether or not Democrats understand that, I think. And my guess is their base is going to demand that they not cave in. It's like you cannot, on the one hand, say this is an existential threat and then behave like it's business as usual. You can't do that.
Look, I understand the temptation, because they still look at, healthcare. Healthcare is a big issue, and we have to negotiate. We have to find a way. But it's not about healthcare. It's about the future of the republic. You have this is the biggest prize, and none of them ever fought for this. So as somebody who was born and raised in the Soviet Union and saw the very short rise of democracy in Russia, its feeble democracy, and its collapse, and also having many friends from the countries that also had this very short and unhappy experience with democracy that followed by another rise of totalitarian rule. So I could see all the signs, and it doesn't, democracy doesn't survive on its own. This is not magic. So it's a prophecy, just coming from Ronald Reagan. This democracy never.
One generation away, right?
Democracy is always one generation away from extinction. Yeah. So that's exactly. Every generation has to fight, and now we have the biggest threat. So which means we have to fight. So it's we're not fighting it's not just the Republican Party, because when you look at the current policies. So I have no doubt that Reagan and Goldwater will be expelled from the party, just for not following the line imposed by Donald Trump, because this is with a ruler like Trump, it's not the truth is not what the leader says, but what the leader says now, because tomorrow today, Trump can contradict himself, and I'm shocked that so many Republican senators and members of the House. People that I just, I used to look at and just, was not with an awe of, but with just certain respect. They just follow these lines, and they're willing to, not just to lie, but basically to refute themselves. So it's amazing. So you just said something yesterday, and now you try to find a way just to escape from your own statements that were absolutely, perfect, impeccable from moral point of view, but because Trump changed his mind, so they're running for cover. Shame.
Well, they're running for cover, and they apparently have decided that being a senator is more important than standing up for even what they believed yesterday, which is, again, it is shocking. It is amazing. Garry Kasparov, it is always an honor to talk with you. I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much for having me. And I hope that one day we can talk about, this is a true rise of America. So just, returning to greatness, not to these terrible times that we live in.
Yeah, let me put that in the calendar for future conversations that I really,
Yes.
I really want to have. And thank you all for listening to this episode of To the Contrary podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes. You know why we do this, why we're going to continue to do this, despite everything that's going on, because we need to continually remind ourselves that we are not the crazy ones.